Super excited to announce the Law Firm Retreat Design Your Future being held this August 5th through 8th, 2026 in the Denver, Colorado area. Teaming up with Law Firm Architects, Power Strategy Group, we're going to be having an amazing opportunity for up to 15 firms to work on the business, not in the business. Find out more at powerstrategygroup.com.
Whether you're podcasting about what you do in your day job, or if you're podcasting about a hobby, or if you have a second job, sort of like I do with the blog and the podcast, it is a way to get your name out there into the internet ether. And that is important because getting your name out there consistently will help with your SEO, your search engine optimization, that you'll become more recognized and your name will sort of elevate when it comes to those searches.
Welcome back. It's Ruby Powers with Power Up Your Practice, and I have a special guest, Michael DJ Eisenberg. We've known each other for a few years already, and we're on the conference circuit as well and do a lot of work with the ABA Law Practice Division. But today we're speaking specifically about why lawyers should podcast. And we do have a plug for both being on a panel about podcasting at ABA Tech Show. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Ruby, thank you for having me on. I appreciate being back. This is my second time. So
Yes,
I'm
I
now a
know.
recurring guest.
I don't know what questions I'm going to ask you for the fun fact questions because you've already answered them before. So maybe we'll just skip that. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see
Fair
where
enough.
we
I'll
go.
come up with a new question.
New question. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Well, so for those who might not know you already, why don't you give us a little bit more of you are a veterans and military member advocate. You have the Tech Savvy Lawyer podcast. You're an author, a podcaster extraordinaire. I'm sure you have some more titles in there somewhere. Give us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I think you kind of nailed it. For the past nearly 20 years now, I've been a veterans benefits advocate, helping veterans get their disability benefits from the VA regarding service connection, proper effective dates, and proper disability ratings. For the past 7 years now, I've been a blogger over the TechSavvyLawyer page, and I'm also a podcaster, accompanying podcasts with the blog. That's been going on for about 6.5 years.
Wow.
And recently, I've become a author, a number one author on Amazon for legal office tech issues. With my book, The Lawyer's Guide, I'm going to hold it up for just a second. The Lawyer's Guide to Podcasting, and it is the why, how, where, when, with a bonus ethics section of about 80 pages of all of the relevant ethics for the 50 continental United States and also its territories, and a little bit in the international arena as well. So
wow.
If you're looking to start your own podcast, or at least thinking about it, this would be a great book to pick up. And I will share, if I'm allowed to share, that if you see me at the ABA Tech Show and say, hey, Mike, I'd like to buy a book, I'll knock off $5 on the price. So you can buy it for $20. I'll have plenty on hand. And until I sell out, you get the discount of about 20% from 25 or $24.99 to $20.
That's a good deal. I'm going to have some of my books at ABA Tech Show too, but I'll have to think about what I'm going to do with their
Sorry.
Yeah. you're
I mean, you put you on the spot.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here, Michael. No, I'm so happy that you wrote this book, and I'm glad that it's out. And so it recently came out in January 26th, available on Amazon, and or if you bump into Michael at a conference. So let me go more into that, I guess. Like, why so you've had your podcast or a podcast for 6 or almost 7 years. I've had mine I think 2-ish years, or two and change. And we get an episode out every week. And I don't know, I just enjoy it so much. I'm not actually my audience are not clients for my law firm, but that's a little unique for my situation. Yeah, same there. Well, yeah, you're right. Same
here.
So what would be like some of the reasons why a lawyer would want to podcast, to have a
So
podcast?
I'm gonna work this a little bit backwards. Okay.
Okay.
And why should lawyers podcast? Well, number one, whether you're podcasting about what you do in your day job, or if you're podcasting about a hobby, or if you have a second job, sort of like I do with the blog and the podcast, it is a way to get your name out there into the internet ether. And that is important because getting your name out there consistently will help with your SEO, your search engine optimization. And we're sort of moving from the tags from Google and all those other search engines to more of the AI and LLM models. And the more
Mhm.
you get out there, and mind you, when I say more, I mean of quality, just don't put out crap, that you'll become more recognized and your name will sort of elevate when it comes to those searches. So that is the number one reason why you want to do it. Now, the second reason you want to do it is so that clients or potential clients get to know you. They get to see you, whether it is your professional realm or if you need to do something a little bit completely different, they see the human side of you. And
No.
and forgive me, I had a third that, and I apologize, it just escapes me. Again, it gets you out there. It gets you out there in the SEO. People get to know you, and as I said, it also, I mean, quite frankly, it sort of sounds redundant, but again, it gets you out there, it gets your name recognition, and hopefully people will hear of you, and then from there, kind of move on to the next. There's one podcast that I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he's an attorney and he does a lot on politics. Now,
Mhm.
mind you, he's not a politician or a political lawyer. He has his own law practice and he back sells his law practice into his podcasts. And his podcasts are really good. Now, mind you, you and I, we have good podcasts. We don't have them maybe as studio defined, with all the gloss and the highlights to it. But that doesn't mean you can't make a good podcast. And that's sort of why I wrote the book, to help lawyers from an A to B to C to D, all the way to the end, create their own podcast. Because you and I, we're both in our office, right?
Mhm.
We're not at a fancy studio. We're using,
Mm.
I think, pretty good cams. And I know you recently had a nice improvement to
I was
your mic.
heavily inspired, encouraged with my hand twisted behind my back to buy a certain mic. By
Yeah, and we have the same brand mic.
Mhm.
And I forgot if you got the I as well.
I think you told me that's the one I'm supposed to have, the Shure
Yes, the Shure
7i.
MV7i.
Yeah.
Because I
Mhm.
had the Shure MV7, and then I think at the same time we were talking about this. I had one at a podcasting conference, the Shure MV7i, which is sort of the
Mhm.
next step, and that encouraged you to get that one. And these are really great podcasting mics, but that does not mean that a first-time podcaster needs to get the fanciest or expensive podcasting mic. Our mics cost about 270, and I think you and I both started off with like a Blue Yeti or something equivalent,
Mhm.
and that was like
Yeah.
80 bucks. And then if you're still really unsure about whether or not you're going to start podcasting, at very minimum, get a wired mic, or of course something like your AirPods with Bluetooth, because you'll notice a difference from, say, using the mic on your computer to a wired mic to a Blue Yeti to a Shure MV7 to, and mind you, at each level, each price level, there are equivalents. You don't have to use the exact name brands that I'm saying. And there's even better mics than the one that I have. But at the moment, I'm happy with my $270 mic. Of course, it's changed in price, and we can improve when if we're really getting into it. So this sort of started as my wife wanted me to get a hobby, and that started with the blog, and then the podcast seemed to naturally roll into it. And I tell my guests, like, this is me having fun. I love
Mhm.
talking about all this tech stuff. I like the blogging aspect of it. And I love the podcasting aspect of it because it allows me to play with different types of tech and different types of software, and just gets my geekiness out. But you don't have to be an expert in dealing with all this stuff. And that's what I hope the book sort of outlines for you: the basic steps, the intermediate steps, and then the advanced steps, whether it's, finding a podcast host, to, when I say a host, a platform to keep your podcast on, to figuring out how to get your podcast out there, to the equipment you need, the mics, the cams, different types of software packages that you like, um, topics to figure out, where to push your podcast out to, etc. So,
So there's a lot there. So
yeah.
I think for me, what I thought about was, yeah, I'd already written a book about law practice management, and I had a
Mhm.
new one coming out, and I realized people learn differently. And there's books. Not everyone is into reading so much,
Mhm.
so maybe they need to hear it or they need to see it, or they learn lots of different ways. And so that's the way I saw it. Was I wanted to find a way that I could have up-to-date information that I could provide in a oral and visual way,
Mhm.
to sort of bring my book to life. But also what I've seen the value is just a lot of the connections and the relationships of those one-on-one purposeful conversations.
Yep.
It's like, I know you love coffee, and I know you have like a, you know, buy me a coffee on your website. I think that's so
Yep.
fun. But like I sort of look at it as these little virtual coffees in a way. But the
Yep.
funny thing is what we're recording it with good or not so good, hardware and stuff like that, depending on the circumstances. But and then with the idea that somebody's going to be listening to what we're saying. But honestly, the value that I find is a lot of that one-on-one, that being purposeful and creating and
Mm.
preparing for those conversations. And then like that, yeah, that's a great added benefit, that if I'm getting some value out of the conversation, other people can be as well. And we're all busy, so like these interviews that are podcasts, they can be listening to while they're working out, walking, driving, whatever. um i I mean, I used to not be a big podcast person. I didn't listen
Right.
to them. I didn't really do anything with them. And then
I've been
here I
listening to
am.
podcasts for like 10, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And, before, podcasting was sort of like a popular thing to do.
Mhm,
And for the listener, there's plenty of room for your podcast. There are People have unique and different tastes. And with all due respect, don't plan on getting a million downloads a day when you're first
mhm,
starting off. And everyone has their different type of the way they appreciate stuff. So the way that you and I talk may not be, our dialogue, the way we have our shows structured, or what we talk about may not be for this person, but it might be for someone else. And the other benefit that you get by podcasting is, Rue, you and I have been friends for several years now. And, a couple times we've like, we're trying to catch up. We're trying to find time, and we don't have time to, just, you know, sit and chit chat. But then it's like, hey, why don't you come on the podcast and we'll talk about what we want to talk about, and then we'll talk about some other stuff too.
yeah.
A- And it's a great way to network and learn, and you get to meet people that you don't necessarily get to meet on a regular basis.
No,
My
I
first,
I
if I
agree.
may,
I mean, I no, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say my first guest was retired Chief Judge Herbert J. Dixon. He
Mhm.
was the District of Columbia Court. I'm sorry, District of Columbia Superior Court Chief Judge, and I had appeared before him, and I met him actually at an ABA Tech show years ago, and I had asked him about, what do you think about this type of show for lawyers? And he said he loved it, and he was my first guest. And every
Oh.
now and then I bump into him, and we talk. We talk not like a judge and attorney, but like two people who've been on a podcast together that share some common interests.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a stronger bond with the people that have been on my podcast,
Hmm.
because it's like we did that, and then like when I see each other, we see each other at conferences,
Right.
or I'm watching them on LinkedIn and want to help promote whatever they're talking about and what they're thinking about. So I really love that. So I think if someone's looking at, an attorney's considering it, we've got examples where, well, you and I are both examples where we're not necessarily doing it to get more clients for our law firm. It's more of like a passion project of
Mhm.
one of our other interests.
But it
Um,
still helps get your name out into the SEO. It still
yeah,
helps get your name out there.
that's true. Making those connections, other potential referrals, and things like that. So I know some other attorneys have podcasts, and they're giving information out to prospective clients, or they're maybe talking about like inspirational stories. Like I have some
Mhm.
friends who have sort of like inspirational stories for immigrants and, as immigration attorneys.
Mhm.
So it could be for whatever reason. I think
Right.
you don't. I think one of the things I realized when I was starting out, it was 2.5-ish years ago, was like, who is your ideal listener? Who's your avatar? Who do you think is going to be listening, or you're trying to like meet their needs? I think that could be helpful to consider. And then,
Mhm.
when you're deciding on like the description and the name of the podcast, keeping that in mind. But I think one of the things I was concerned about when I started was I was really like, I don't know, maybe it was my assistant at the time who was helping me. Like I was overthinking it too much.
Mhm.
Like I wanted it to be too perfect or something. I was like, screw this. If I have to make it too
Oh,
perfect, I'm
yeah.
not going to do it, And so that's one thing I want to share is like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Some people have started and stopped podcasts, start another one, rename it, rebrand it, clarify their avatar or their ideal client, the ideal
But that's
listener.
fine. But
Yeah.
Ruby, I invite you to go back to one of your first podcasts from a couple years ago and listen to it. And with all due respect, not that it was bad, but you're going to cringe because of all the mistakes that you made, and that's okay be- because it's a constant process of improvement.
Hmm.
I mean, if I listen back to, if I listen back to some of my older podcasts, including the ways I used to edit them, I'm sure that they're just, they're good, but compared to what I'm doing now, I was using a Blue Yeti, and I was using different software to edit, and I was my own editor. Now, mind you, as you get more and more into it, and if you're producing more and more, you may want to get like, a contractor to help you with some of that processing, or you may want to hire a firm, or you may just want to do it yourself, depending on how much you're producing. I personally come out every other week. I do have some help.
Hmm.
Um, there's more I'd like to do, but it's an issue of time and resources, and everyone just needs to figure it out for themselves. But hopefully, you're having fun along the way. If this is becoming too much of a job for you, maybe you need to think of a different way or different means of doing stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and we usually record on Tuesday afternoons,
Mhm,
and then I go and I teach my law practice management course. So it's usually like I'm on just in that mindset, that sort of batching all the law practice
mhm.
management type of conversations. So let's say someone's decided who their ideal listener is, and their title and maybe their little description. And that's a good point. You could be doing it weekly or every other week, or maybe even monthly,
Yep.
some podcasts. So you can start less frequently and then maybe build up. And
Right.
then the other thing is there's a lot of the software out there has gotten better and better to almost like to help you do a lot of the editing and clips
Mhm.
and things. Like the three that I see the most are either Riverside, StreamYard, or sometimes people are using Zoom as well. Are
For
they
recording.
what Yeah, for recording. Hmm.
And like Zoom, everyone has it.
Hmm.
And even with the basic free, I think you get 45 minutes of free recording, 40 or
40.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And those are great ways to start. And then you got to figure out what type of podcast you want. Do you want to have just a solo where you're talking?
Hmm.
Or you want to have sort of like an interview or a panel or even a live call in?
How do you do the live call-in?
Well, you use something like Zoom and you
Mhm.
allow, basically the link is
Oh,
public, but,
right.
but you
Yeah,
use the admin to let people in and kick
right.
people out,
Mhm,
or unmute their mics. Hopefully you can
mhm.
get like them to like text you the question that they'd like to ask you so that you can sort of filter out the ones that are appropriate and the ones that aren't appropriate.
I guess it's also like if you use StreamYard and you had a live stream,
Mhm.
wherever you want to do it, and
Right.
then the questions are being monitored. Yeah, yeah.
And what's the important rule that you and I both know as lawyers about podcasting? What is
I'm
the one
sure you're
thing
going
we
to
don't
tell
do?
me give legal advice. I don't
That's correct. Give
know.
legal advice. You can talk in generalities, but you don't want to inadvertently create an attorney-client relationship where somebody comes back and says, "Oh, I relied on your information,
Mm.
and I lost, or I got thrown in jail, or something negative happened." Um, the story. My father was a he was an instructor at a paralegal school, and one of his students came up to him and said, "Hey, if I had listened to what you said, I would have lost my case." And he's like, "What? You know, I never told you to do or not do something."
Mhm.
And the whole Department of Education got involved, and it turned out to be a nothing burger. So you've just got to be
Uh,
careful. I mean, he wasn't offering legal advice; he was teaching his class, and what that person did or didn't do with it, well, that's on them. But if you're having that sort of one-on-one where you're talking about specific facts to a case, you may inadvertently be providing legal advice and or creating an attorney-client relationship.
yeah, that's a good point. And since I'm not really talking about law per se, I don't really
Hmm.
think about that very often, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, especially if you're
Yeah.
a lawyer and you're podcasting, but also if you're talking to prospective your audience is targeted more to prospective clients as well. Uh, so going
And
back
also,
okay. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, make sure you have a disclaimer, like either
Mm.
on your webpage or on your show blog, that this doesn't count. This, that communications is not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship, et cetera, et cetera.
This episode is sponsored by Candle AI, the legal email assistant that helps legal teams spend less time on client emails. You heard me right, spending less time on emails. Candle AI works with both Gmail and Outlook, so you don't have to learn a new tool. And then it connects with popular case management systems like Clio, Filevine, INSSoom, and more to come. It instantly shows you your case and the client details the moment you open a client email and right inside your inbox. Then that means less context switching and time spent jumping to different tabs to figure out what you need to respond. Candle can also draft context-aware responses to client emails and makes it easy to create, edit, and manage your email templates. If you want to save time and take back control of your inbox, check out Candle AI. I highly suggest it. So I think there's a few other things that people might be wondering, like, can they do? You sort of mentioned it, like, should they get someone to hire someone to help them do their podcast, or can they do it on their own? You could try to get and have an assistant help you find maybe some help on like Upwork or Fiverr or what have you. Maybe
Right.
learn some courses and then do it. It really just sort of depends your bandwidth and how much you love doing that technical side, but it's not scary. Like
No,
you'll
no,
get
no, no, no.
figure it out.
It's
Yeah.
it's um it's pretty much DIY, do it yourself, and you just have to sort of learn. And I apologize for the self promotion, but again, books like Lawyer's Guide to Podcasting is a great way to start. This way,
Mhm.
this costs you $25, and read through it, see if you're getting sort of the basics of what you need, and if this is something that you're truly interested in doing. And then, I talk about, like I've mentioned this before, start off cheap. You don't have to buy an expensive mic. You don't have to buy an expensive cam. You don't have to get so much like a large expensive service to host your platform. Um, but what I would do is, if you are going to if you're going to start a podcast or thinking of starting a podcast, figure out what your domain name is and purchase that separate from whatever service or website builder you may want to use to serve as your platform for your show. And I say that because get it through something like hover.com or GoDaddy or whatever you use for your firm, because if you end up changing services, whether again it's your web page hosting or your podcast hosting, and you want to move from service A to service B, well, they may be able to keep your web address if it's through them, if you get it through them, if you purchase that domain name through them, because it's part of their package. And then if you decide to move to, again, from A to B, you may lose your domain name, and you don't want that.
Mm. So another thing I think is a question is, do you do video with audio or just audio? And
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, just remember for the listener, a podcast isn't exactly defined as audio or video. It can be either. I do mine audio, and I want to go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about how you wanted a different platform to sort of, get out there and reach the
Mhm,
audience.
mhm,
And a term that everyone should probably learn, maybe not at first, is repurposing your content.
mhm,
So I start off with an audio podcast, and I can repurpose the audio into a static video and put that on YouTube. So, because apparently that's where a lot of people are flocking to listen to podcasts. So again, it's a static. In other words, you see one picture, or maybe I change pictures from chapter to chapter. There's
mhm.
a little closed captions that you get to watch, and also a little sound bar that goes up and down. So that gets my audience out to a broader audience, and also helps improve my SEO. And sort of flipping it back to the blog, I've been experimenting. So with the blog, every Monday I come up with an editorial. And through the Labs initiative, I'm now taking that editorial and I'm putting it into a Google LLM chat, an AI chat, and I say, create a discussion between two panelists about the blog posting. And so for people who don't have time to read the blog posting, they can listen to a podcast discussion of that editorial. And if they don't have time to listen, and if they prefer to watch it, I'm also moving that over to YouTube. So they can get it however they want. If they want to get it by reading it, great. If they want to hear a discussion about it, they can on through the podcast, or they can watch it on YouTube. So that helps, repurpose and expand your audience.
So and you can do one or the both or whatever, and then you can change your mind, whichever one you want. So
Right.
we've this whole time we've done video and
Mhm,
audio, and
mhm,
so we have it on video on YouTube,
mhm,
and then we have the audio on all the places that podcasts are found. And
mhm.
yeah, I love the repurposing, recycling content, whatever. And one thing I really love about I didn't notice this before on StreamYard. I saw it on Riverside, but now I see it on StreamYard, where you can just have like a little button. It's like AI, like, do you want us to make you clips? And I'm like, hell yeah,
Yep.
make me clips.
Yep.
And then like sometimes even before I like finish that, that sitting down, I'll have like cute little clips and I'll just like post them everywhere about like, a promo of that interview. I'll do it after we talk.
Yeah.
But
No,
the
I
tech
do the
is so
same thing.
cool now. Yeah, it's awesome.
I do the same thing with the script,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
where
right. Descript is the other one. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
I love to script, which is similar to StreamYard. And one of the things I love about it, I think you can do this in other platforms now, is that your transcript, you can edit your transcript of the audio slash video, and the audio video will correspond. So if you select like a sentence and
Mhm.
delete it, that will be taken out of your podcast, your audio and video podcast as well. One of the things I love to do is I don't think people like to hear us think. In other words, those long gaps of silence where it's like, that's a good idea. Let me think about that for a second. And then you wait, a minute while it's just dead silence, or even if it's 10 seconds, 5 seconds. I mean, I cut my audio very closely to zero point 0.3 seconds
Mm,
so that, we're not listening. Because, look, with all respect, we're all lawyers here. Time is valuable, time is money. And not everyone knows that they can actually set their podcast listening
Speed.
speeds to
Mm-hmm.
1.3 or whatever speed they prefer.
Mm.
Um, the joke I always tell people is that there's a couple of political shows, news shows that I like to watch, but rarely do I actually have time to sit and listen to it or watch it at that time. But I listen to their podcast variants. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
listen to that podcast variant, it's at 1.3 speed.
Mm.
So it goes a little faster, but then I listen to them or watch them on TV, once in a blue moon. And, it's like they're talking really slow. It's kind of like, suddenly they sound like they're a little slow in the head. And it's a little bit like disorienting, but then you got to remind yourself, oh yeah, it's because you play it fast on your podcast player.
Yeah, that's like how I listen to Audible.
Mhm.
Usually 1.3 or something. It depends on how slow they are originally.
Right.
Uh, so I want to go to another question that I
Sure.
think people might be thinking is like to get sponsors or not, like, and how, but let me before I go to that question, like how does one gauge how they're doing success? I mean, what's the definition of success? That's a good question, but like, how many people are listening and how long are they listening? Like, and getting feedback and how they would adapt their podcast.
Whatever platform you're using to host your podcast should give you some insights to that. How many people are showing, how many people, how long are people listening in general, your basic
Mhm.
analytics. And so I use a service called Libsyn, Libsyn, and they host and they push out. And they give me an idea of how much is being, how many episodes are being downloaded. And from that, you can sort of gauge how much you could possibly charge for sponsorship. But a lot of those services also have something baked in where
Hmm.
you're not earning as much as you could, but you're earning a little something. And you have some control of how many ads that you want in your show. So for instance, I just posted a recent labs initiative. And basically the way their service works is there's two ads in the beginning, two ads in the end, and then I add in some ads at certain points of the show where, like, we're moving on from question number one to question number two. And before we start question number two, here are a couple ads. And when we're finishing, question 2 to 3, I'll put another ad slot, and you can put in as many or as few as you want, with the exception of the beginning and the end. Now, I'm not swimming in dough, as they say, but I earn a little something that adds to the production costs, and it just takes time. Now, I can say that I'm within the top 10% of all downloaded podcasts.
Mm.
And that's in part because I have I post regularly. I have, how do I say this? I have more than 10 listeners. And mind you, I have much more than 10 listeners, and on the other hand, but I don't have a million listeners.
Mhm.
One of the podcasts that I enjoy is Lawyers Behaving Badly. I don't know if you listen to that or not.
I don't.
Check it
I'll
out.
have to go check it out. Okay.
Um, they're, I think, in the top 10, and
Okay.
they typically publish, I think, once a month, but sometimes they can have longer gaps, and sometimes they have a bunch together. But if you could try to be regular about your podcasting, it will help. Of course, they're not quite the norm. And yeah, I'm, like I said, I think in the top 10 podcasts, I'm the top 10%. But again, my podcast is a little bit uh, narrowly focused.
Mhm.
Basically, I'm looking at lawyers, judges, and legal professionals who want to learn more about using tech. And this past year and a half, 2 years, it's all been about AI.
Yeah. I feel like my podcast has a subtopic because it's a lot of
Right.
AI and legal tech,
Mhm.
honestly. I have to purposely go find non-legal tech AI topics to sort of pepper it in, or else I might have to rename the podcast or something.
Uh,
um, so I think what I've seen from my experience is that it's like the more consistent you are, the more you've sort of struck that chord with your ideal listener. But
mm,
it's something you want to do too. You're not just doing it just for,
right.
you enjoy it. We enjoy it. We enjoy it.
Right.
It's like finding that synergy, finding that overlap between what people want and what you enjoy doing, and creating that value for them. But then you have that consistency, you increase your listener viewership, and that's when I think the sponsors come, sort of can start getting interested in you, or else they're asking you numbers. They want to know what your downloads and listening time, and who's
But
your audience, that type of
but
thing.
remember that when it comes to your audience, remember that, like for me and for you, we have targeted audience.
Hmm.
So we're not looking at everybody. So if we don't have 100,000 downloads a month, well, that makes sense. We're at a targeted audience, and you have to sell that to the potential sponsor. And
Hmm.
I'll share a little secret with you, as long as you don't tell anyone else,
Okay.
when it comes to helping with figuring out your analytics.
Okay.
So
Should we stop recording then?
no, 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 no. This is for the audience too.
All right.
So use one of your AIs, and prompt it to say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer podcasting about this. I've got this many downloads. What are some suggested uh, price ranges for either ads or sponsorship?" And also remember, this is a little bit more just in podcasting in general, that if you're constantly talking about a product, if you will, giving it love,
Hmm.
reach out to that product's manufacturer or owner or software company or service and say, "Hey, we talk about you a lot. We love you a lot. We would hope maybe you consider, sponsoring a show or two." Um, yeah, and show notes is actually very important. And when you have links to your sponsors, let alone to the items that you talk about, so for instance, I would guess, Ruby, in your show notes, you would have a link to the Shure MB7i,
Okay.
and perhaps a list of all the other items we talked about. Maybe I don't know, but maybe you might have a link to my book or not. Uh, but that's sort of how you get out there. And let's talk about, where do you post? Well, where do lawyers post? Well, you can post to Facebook, but
Hmm.
Facebook is not really geared toward, say, my clients. My clients, or my audience, I really should say, are going to be on LinkedIn. Those are going to be the lawyers that want to learn about tech.
Hmm.
Your audience perhaps is more toward the you know immigrant clients, and there are either magazines or journals or websites where you might want to push that over to, especially if you're mentioning them as a resource, and have that in the show notes, and reach out to them and say, "Hey," the worst thing they could do is say no. But remember, offer what it is you're providing them: a curated audience who's specifically interested in this topic.
And I think one other thing is when you have guests, because like you were said, like you could just be you talking, it could be a panel, could be one
Hmm.
on one, like a guest. But when you do have guests, when you give them a heads up when the podcast is going to come out,
Right.
maybe you give them some clips,
Yeah.
and a lot of those assets or whatever you want to call it, for to help them promote it on
Hmm.
their own social media as well, which is why it can really be exponential, the reach between your network and their network when you
Right.
you have a
Because you're
guest on your
helping each
podcast.
other. You're helping each
Right.
other,
It's yeah,
because
it-
they're introduced to your audience, and you're introduced to theirs.
exactly.
And
Uh, like a win-win-win
yes,
win.
and it just it but it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I have not devoted as much time and love as I would prefer when it comes to the blog and the podcast. I have a day job, and my growth has been slow, but it's been steady, and I
Mhm.
learned things along the way, and it just takes time. So if you're looking to dive head into it, great, but that means you're probably gonna have to put your practice to the side, which I'm guessing you can't. So you may need to get some help, whether it's through a contractor or a service. On the other hand, if you just kind of want to take the slow approach and devote several hours, once a week, because you can block some time, work on your podcast, and then use certain services to push out your podcast release, your show notes, your clips staggered so you don't have to do something every day.
So I think we'll be closing up shortly, but there's so much fun. The more we talk, the more I'm thinking of other ideas. But um, after I started getting going, then I had these services reaching out to me, trying to
Hmm.
get people I'd never heard of on my podcast. Um,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
that
yeah.
made me also think about guesting. Like before you start your own podcast, you could get yourself as a guest on other podcasts, which is
Yes.
what I did, and sort of learn the tech and the thought and the how do you want to set up, what background do you want to have, like all these little things that we're not even talking about, all of those. But then also it's the same benefit of like getting your name out there and sort of learning from being on someone else's podcast. How do they ask questions? How do they create their what's their format,
Right.
and all those little tips, and just like listening to other podcasts can be good research for curating what you want out of your podcast.
So I know there are a couple, there are several services out there that basically work on searching to find podcasts for their clients to be on.
Mhm.
And that, on one hand, is, I'll say, good, not great. I'm saying it's not, I'm not using the word great because I get a lot of pitches for people to be on my show. And, I'm always happy to entertain someone, but they don't seem to quite understand my show. I mean, not
Mhm.
saying that my show is complicated, but it's for lawyers and other legal professionals about using tech. And then I'll get something that's just kind of completely out there. It's like they didn't listen to my show. So why is there guests? And, sometimes I get some good ones. And I've had several of those solicited guests on my show, and they've been great guests. For me personally, we're members of a bunch of different listservs, and through the listservs and like CLEs and other articles and whatnot that I come across is how I get my guests. I send them an email saying, "Hey, I'd love to have you on the show
Mhm.
to talk about X, Y, and Z. Would you like to be a guest?" And I'm always very clear. It's not a gotcha interview. I'll edit it very tight. I get rid of any of the mistakes. And once I publish it out there, you're welcome to have a copy of it and do with it what you will. And please, by all means, let me know if I make a mistake. And,
Yeah.
people always love to talk about themselves because y'all want to learn about them, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense.
Yeah, I at first I was like honored. I was like, "Ooh, they want to be on my podcast." And then I was like, "Wait a minute." Like it added a little extra layer of work because then I was like, "I'm not going to just say yes to everybody. I want to
Right, right.
like vet them and have
Mhm.
like a little chit chat and whatever." I'm like we vet them, like
Right.
I think at this point I'm like I'd rather not, and depending on who they are.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I am trying to, I think that's another thing is like if you do guests, and like we're pretty consistently about having a guest every show, um then you're also like, well, who do you know? Who do you hang out with? Who do you want to pull on? So it is sort of fun too. Actually, that's another pro. Like when you're out and about, when I'm at conferences, and I'm like, this is an excuse to get on the phone again, or the phone to connect with them again and get them on the
Right.
podcast to have that like more of a more in depth one-on-one conversation, but and get to know them better. But that's sort of like a good like call to action, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I've been more like selective because I want to curate what the programming. And you can do that. So just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to say yes. And there's no rule that says you can't have the same guest over again.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to always have a guest, so really you can do whatever you want. It's just,
Because it's your show.
yeah.
It's your show. And by the way, do you remember what we did the second time we met?
Did we have coffee? I don't know. I
No?
don't the second time. I don't make like a log of every time I see you. Give me a hint.
Okay, it was in Utah.
Okay. Was that the
Remember,
second time we ever met?
that was the second
That's the
time.
time you interviewed me on your podcast. You like had
Right. We did
your
some
travel
spontaneous
gear.
recording. Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was so awesome because you had your gear like, let's
Yep.
just do it. And I'm all like, whoa, we didn't have to schedule on Calendly and make this thing happen in a few weeks and blah, 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 getting a whole bunch of assistants involved. We were just like, boom, let's do it. And that's what's also fun about a lot of these conferences is that sometimes they'll have a space or you could just go commandeer your own space, which is what we did. And you can just interview someone, you just pretty much have to have good mic and headset and quiet enough space and internet and whatever. But you're right. That was
Can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Because I don't want you freaking out your audience when you say you had your gear. I had my laptop with me, which I go everywhere with because we're always working. And two, for travel, I had my Blue Yeti mic, which was, I think at that point, my old mic. And so I had a carrying case for it, and I throw it in my luggage. It's $80. Heavens forbid it gets lost or stolen. I'm out $80. And I had the proper wires, and we were good to go. And it was fun. I'll send you a link to that if you want. You can put in your show notes.
Yeah, we should do that. Yeah. That'd be great. Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the different things you have to do to run a law firm? Well, you're not alone. So many law firm owners are in the same boat. That's where Staffy steps in. More than 90 firms, just like yours, are leaning on their bilingual virtual staff for legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work, plus their full HR support. I currently have 11 team members with Staffy across my own firm and Power Strategy Group, and it's been a total game changer. Schedule a free initial consultation at staffy.cc, that's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY, R-U-B-Y, for $500 off. I think that as we come to a close, it's like, this can be fun. You can have your different reasons for why you're doing it. It's good to have like an idea of who your ideal audience is and what your goal and purpose is, especially when because initially you're going to build up a lot of infrastructure and then you're sort of going to go through the motions, but you want to remember why you're doing what you're doing and also know that you can pivot, change your mind, reimagine, reinvent yourself. And honestly, I have so much fun doing this. I'm glad that I do it. And it's like, and then to really what we forgot to mention so far was that we're both going to be on a panel at the ABA Tech Show talking about this topic. And so just anyone who will be at ABA Tech Show, we've got a really great star lineup. Not only will we have Michael and myself, but we're going to have Guy and Stephanie. Everyone has a podcast, and we're going to be talking about podcasting for lawyers, the truth behind the mic. A lot about what we talked about today with different perspectives, with different goals of the different podcasts. But I love it when I bump into other podcasters at events. I always learn from them. I love having them on my show too. Always learning or being on their show. But I'm so glad that you got your book. You decided to write this book, that you wrote it, that you have it out now. And I love that it's yellow, just like your hat, just like your podcast. It's like your color. I'm blue, you're yellow.
Where's your blue hat, lady?
I'm not wearing blue right now. It's I diversified my coloring today, but you can see
gotta
my
wear a blue
sign.
Hat. Sorry, it's the hat club.
Hat person.
Okay. And wait, let's see, where did it go? Where did it go? I was going to show you my mug that disappeared from my desk.
Oh, right. The Power Up Your Practice mug. You have a limited edition.
Wait a minute.
Right?
No, I don't.
What? I'm sure I gave it to you. Oh my gosh. I'm
I'm
sure
looking
there's
at
a
my hall of
photo
mugs here.
evidence.
I'm
Photo
looking at my hall
evidence.
of mugs behind me, and I don't think I've ever received a Power Up mug. But what I was looking was the TechSavvyLawyer.page mug that I give all my guests.
Oh, which
Um,
I didn't get. I didn't
yes, you
get that.
did. You
No,
didn't
I
get it?
didn't.
Well,
Okay,
you know
so
why?
basically we're both glitching. What? What?
Because you didn't send me the Power Up mug. I'm like, all right, well, forget it. She doesn't get a mug.
Oh.
No, no, no. I will check with my VA, my
Okay.
virtual assistant, because that should have been out. But I will make a note to
I'll have
her.
I'll have to bring one to ABA Tech Show if indeed there is evidence that I did not give you one.
Well, how do I prove a negative?
Well, I
Which
usually take a picture of myself giving it to someone, so I'm gonna go check.
okay,
All
if you have a
right.
picture, you give it to yourself. I'm
Give
going to
it
need
to
a picture
you,
of that.
not to myself.
I mean, oh, I gave a picture of myself, and hey, what's wrong with that?
I'll just crop you in the photo as my evidence. No, I'll bring you one.
you know, we can talk about deep fakes another day.
Yeah, that's true. Another topic, another day. But Michael, how can people find you again and find your book of the hopefully we persuaded them to have a podcast and
So,
invite both of us on their shows.
please find me at www.thetechsavvylawyer.page. You can also find me wherever you listen to podcasts at the techsavvylawyer.page podcast. Um, and please say hi. Please shoot an email at michaeldj at the techsavvylawyer.page. Love to hear from you. Love for guest ideas. If you're interested in the book, it's available on Amazon. Uh, Under books, the Tech Savvy Lawyer. Also, there should be a QR code on your screen. I think that's right to my right, your left. Or no, my left, your right. And from that, you should be able to go directly to Amazon and purchase a book. And remember, if you ask me at the tech show, say, "Hey, Mike, I'd like to buy a book from you today at the tech show." You get 20% off.
Awesome. That sounds like a great deal.
So,
So and also come to our panel if you
yes,
haven't gotten
yes.
that message already, the memo. Yeah.
And ask, please, come and approach us after, before, during, at the tech show if you have questions. Myself, Ruby, Guy, and Stephanie will be more than happy to answer any questions if we don't get to yours during the panel. And I think you're going to have a great time.
And actually, I'm realizing that I've watched the podcasting for lawyers at ABA Talk Show like the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And each time I went, I got inspired, even before I even had my own podcast. And so that's why I feel like we're carrying the torch on having this. And it's a great opportunity. And so and everybody on the panel, everybody at ABA Talk Show is all the speakers and everyone is the organizers are very generous with their time and being a resource. So great.
Well, let me add to that I want you guys to come out to the panel and leave with so many great ideas that when you come back the following year, not only will you learn more ideas, but you'll forget about some of the ones that you learned the last time because you weren't able to implement them all because you just didn't have enough time to do it.
Yeah, and there's so much, and you don't know what you don't know, but now you've learned a lot. So now you're a quasi expert on something.
I go to a couple podcasting conferences, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I remember that from last year, and I didn't have time to do it, but remember this year, and I actually went and did it.
Well, Michael, it's been great. I know that people reach out to you and check out your book on Amazon, and they're going to definitely come up and say, "I heard your podcast, and that inspired me to come to watch this panel at ABA Talk Show." So, thanks so much for being on today's show. Looking forward to being on the panel with you, and we'll definitely see each other at the next event.
I look forward to it, Ruby. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Your Practice. I'm Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. We love your reviews, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us one and share this podcast with someone else so that they can know what you've been learning on our show. And make sure to check out the Power Up Your Practice book. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's packed with 25 chapters of strategies to grow and streamline your firm. And we also have the free Power Hub community on School to keep the conversation going in between the episodes. So make sure to keep powering up your practice, and we'll see you next time.